evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Salma El Feki, and welcome to Q News special coverage. Yesterday, Egypt inaugurated the Grand Egyptian Museum, a landmark beside the pyramids that supporters hail as a generational investment in culture, tourism, and scholarship. The ceremony drew high-level guests and global attention. Today, we'll look beyond the spectacle, how this institution will manage visitor access, conservation work, and international partnerships in the months ahead. We will also examine measured concerns raised over timelines, costs, and public value, and ask what success should look like 1 year from now. Do stay with us for expert analysis and in-depth coverage into the Grand Egyptian Museum, Egypt's narrator of a great civilization. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has said that the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum marks a new chapter in Egypt's timeless story, honoring an eternal civilization whose brilliance endures forever.
واليوم ونحن نحتفل معا بافتتاح المتحف المصري الكبير. نكتب فصلا جديدا من تاريخ الحاضر والمستقبل. في قضية هذا الوطن العريق فهذا أكبر متحف في العالم مخصص لحضارة واحدة، حضارة مصر التي لا ينقضي بهاؤها.
Fireworks lit the Cairo sky and drone swarms traced pharaonic symbols as Egypt opened the Grand Egyptian Museum in a lavish ceremony after years of delays. Egypt unveiled the Grand Egyptian Museum with a nighttime spectacle of fireworks and synchronized drones forming hieroglyphics and royal emblems above Egypt and above Giza. Dignitaries and guests entered past the Ramses II Colossus before a stage program of music and multimedia mapping on the museum facade. Authorities framed the opening as a cultural milestone that anchors tourism and international partnerships in conservation and research. The complex, beside the pyramids, now moves into phased public access, with headline galleries and visitor routes activated following the ceremony. Drone swarms painted the Giza night with pharaonic figures above the Grand Egyptian Museum as synchronized formations rippled across the sky for the opening ceremony. New aerial displays crowned the museum's opening, with fleets of drones sketching hieroglyphic motifs, royal cartouches, and sacred figures over the plateau. Choreography was timed to a live score, with patterns shifting in sequence before dissolving into light trails above the museum facade. Organizers said the program was designed to showcase Egypt's heritage through coded imagery and precision flight, ending with layered symbols that appeared to unfurl towards the pyramids. In an interview with Q News, Egyptologist Dr. Zay Hawass called the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening a big day, tracing the project's start to 2002 and direct backing from President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to completion, and promising a once-in-a-lifetime Tutankhamun display. Hawass said the museum's singularity rests on three pillars: its setting by Khufu's pyramid, its scale as a one civilization museum, and a unified display of the full Tutankhamun collection. He highlighted story-led curation, light, space, and text guiding viewers, alongside Japanese-Egyptian work on Khufu's boats and a major library and conservation labs funded partly by the Tut exhibitions abroad. He further noted that rotating displays will keep content fresh. Hawass recalled the CT and genetic studies linking Tut to Akhenaten and Queen Tiye, adding the king's mummy remains in the Valley of the Kings to preserve context, framing the museum as scholarship, spectacle, and public pride in one. Egypt inaugurated the Grand Egyptian Museum in a spectacular ceremony led by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, unveiling a landmark that celebrates 5 millennia of heritage and signals a new era for culture and tourism in Giza.
Here in Giza, within sight of the pyramids, Egypt inaugurated the Grand Egyptian Museum with a spectacular ceremony led by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, sealing the opening of a cultural landmark decades in the making. The night unfolded with orchestral performances, precision choreography, fireworks, and drone light displays, welcoming royal figures, world leaders, and international dignitaries to a celebration of Egypt's living heritage and global stature.
واليوم ونحن نحتفل معا بافتتاح المتحف المصري الكبير نكتب فصلا جديدا من تاريخ الحاضر والمستقبل في قضية هذا الوطن العريق. فهذا أكبر متحف في العالم مخصص لحضارة واحدة، حضارة مصر التي لا ينقضي بهاؤها.
Rising between Cairo and the desert, the museum is presented as the world's largest devoted to a single civilization. Its geometry aligns with the Giza Plateau and carries visitors through vast, light-filled halls toward a grand staircase that frames timeless views of the pyramids. At the atrium, the red granite colossus of Ramses II greets guests before they enter galleries that showcase tens of thousands of masterpieces spanning millennia of art, belief, and statecraft, conserved and displayed to international standards. The inauguration drew an exceptional international turnout that reflects Egypt's cultural reach and diplomatic weight. Officials highlighted the museum's role in energizing tourism, creating jobs, and inspiring creative industries, positioning Egypt as a premier destination for learning, culture, and exchange. Beyond its scale, the project stands as a statement of modern capability, meticulous preservation, and national pride. This opening was more than a ceremony. It was a promise that Egypt's story is not only preserved, but presented with confidence to the world, inviting every visitor to walk through history and feel its future.
And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Ali Abu Cheish, the Egyptian antiquities expert and director of the Zaya Hawass Foundation for Antiquities and Heritage in Giza. Welcome, sir, to Q News. Let me ask you first, what makes the Grand Egyptian Museum's curation truly new? How does the storyline guide visitors from the Old Kingdom to the Ptolemaic age in a way no museum has done before? If you can explain to us a little bit how this is going to be done.
Of course, the display methodology in the Grand Egyptian Museum is inspiring. For the first time, the treasures of only one civilization, which is the ancient Egyptian civilization, since the Old Kingdom to the Ptolemaic and then the Greek eras. For the first time, all of these treasures are being displayed in a way that is well suited for such treasures. It is not only a museum, but it's a scientific institution to safeguard these antiquities and artifacts, which are property for the entire humanity. We are the only civilization inscribing its history on stones, and that's why it remained till this moment. It also sends a political message with the attendance of the heads of states to the opening ceremony, which was also a message that Egypt can and able to protect its antiquities and artifacts, showcasing all eras of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Egypt opened this Grand Egyptian Museum to send a message to the entire world that it can safeguard its antiquities and artifacts.
Dr. Abu Cheish, Dr. Zaya Hawes told Q News in an interview that the museum's uniqueness rests on three pillars: the Giza setting, the single civilization scope, and the full Tutankhamun display. Which of these do you think will most change the public understanding, and how will you bring it to life in programs and research?
Of course, it's a scientific institution, and we have a research center inside the museum. We have the biggest library that was moved from the Egyptian Museum in the Tahrir Square. It's now a campus for all the scholars from the entire world. Dr. Zahi, as he stated, that it's like the Metropolitan 5 times. It is only combining the history of one civilization, and that's where the grandeur comes from. The location, the geographic location of the pyramids is embracing this museum, telling the narrative and the story of a great civilization. The statue of Ramses II is receiving visitors with the name of the king inscribed. And also there is a statue of god Habi, the god of the Nile, is displayed with technology. Next to it, fountains, and protecting the Nile, and which is a symbol of strength. It's an indirect message for anyone tampering with the Nile and its arrival to Egypt.
Sir, can you tell us why is displaying the full Tutankhamun collection together so important for scholarship and for the public? And which pieces do you think will most change what we thought we knew about Tutankhamun?
Of course, the treasures of Tutankhamun are being displayed for the first time completely since its discovery by Howard Carter, and it will be opened on Tuesday for all visitors. He is now the hero of the museum with his complete tomb being displayed now at the Grand Egyptian Museum. Yesterday, we have seen that the one who discovered this tomb was the child Hussein Abdul Latif. We have the entire collection of Tutankhamun being displayed. 500 of them are being displayed for the first time. The narrative telling the story is inspiring and is captivating, placed in a very beautiful hall, showcasing the greatness of the young king. And
Yes.
there is a beautiful sentence written in hieroglyphs, which is "Peace be upon you," with one with beautiful face. Tutankhamun, of course, is the hero of this museum. Like the mummies are the main figures in the Civilization Museum. The museum is featuring a lot of other statues as well.
Okay, the conservation labs are described as world class. What do you think are going to be the breakthroughs, maybe in restoration or analysis in terms of materials, pigments, mummies, boats, should we expect to come out of GEM? Shall I repeat the question? The conservation labs are described as world class of the GEM. What breakthroughs do you think in terms of restoration or analysis, in terms of materials, pigments, mummies, boats, should we be expecting to come out of GEM?
Of course, the restoration labs are very advanced, featuring the most modern ways of restoration. The first lab, which is the biggest in the world of its kind, with the Egyptian employees worked to transfer around 100,000 pieces of artifacts and restored 57,000 of them. And they also restored the first boat of King Khufu, which is one of the most beautiful boats found. till now it's a wooden boat made of an organic material, the oldest in history for this great King Khufu, who was later on a king and then a god. It was transported in 48 hours from the pyramids region to the Grand Egyptian Museum in a dedicated hall. And for any visitor who visits the museum can see the second Khufu boat being restored in front of visitors.
Yes, actually, this is my next question, which is Khufu's boats. And in terms of moving it very precisely and very carefully. And we have Ramses II, and they are at the centerpieces of the colossus. What did it take to move and stabilize and present such monuments safely while keeping at the same time their original context clear to visitors?
Yes, we're talking about King Khufu's boat. It was discovered by Kamal al-Malakh, the Egyptologist. It was restored and collected next to the Khufu pyramid. And then the state made the decision to transport it to the Grand Egyptian Museum to be displayed there. It's an organic artifact. The biggest of its kind, and it was transported to the Grand Egyptian Museum to tell the narrative of King Khufu. Some opinions say that King Khufu actually used it, and others say that it was to transfer them to, or to take them to the eternity journey.
And Ramses II, sir? Was it also? Dr. Abouchish, can you hear me?
The statue of King Ramses II, which receives visitors who and fought wars for Egypt, and he was the first to establish peace. He was the king of war and peace, and that was inscribed in the facade of his temple of Karnak. He was the first to establish a peace treaty. He built a lot of prominent temples, including the Abu Simbel temple, and for his wife Nefertari, he built a temple on which he wrote, "She is the one for whom the sun rises," and the capital was Sharqiya governorate at the time. He was moved to the square of Ramses first, and then to the Grand Egyptian, first for the Egyptian Museum by Minister Farouk Hosni, and the idea was very successful. Then President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi completed the project in a message for the entire world that Egypt is capable of protecting its artifacts. Now the statue of Ramses II stands to receive the visitors as expressing us being a state of peace.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. From Cairo, that was Dr. Ali Abouchish, the Egyptian antiquities expert and director of the Zaya Hawass Foundation for Antiquities and Heritage in Giza. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. And the United States congratulated Egypt on the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening, with the U.S. President for Arab, Middle Eastern and African Affairs, Mossad Boulos, representing President Donald Trump at the spectacular celebration in Cairo. The U.S. Embassy in Cairo said Mossad Boulos, senior advisor to President Donald Trump, joined the ceremony marking the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening, describing it as spectacular. The embassy voiced pride in celebrating alongside the Egyptians and reaffirmed a shared commitment to safeguarding cultural heritage and fostering people-to-people understanding. Officials highlighted ongoing U.S.-Egypt cooperation on conservation and cultural exchange as the museum begins public programming. The embassy expressed pride in celebrating this achievement with all the Egyptians and reaffirmed its shared commitment to preserving cultural heritage and promoting understanding among peoples. And Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory message to President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on the occasion of the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum. In the message published by the Chinese Embassy in Cairo, Xi extended his sincere congratulations to President el-Sisi and the Egyptian people on the museum's inauguration. And Xi expressed his belief that the Grand Egyptian Museum will leave a profound mark on Egypt's cultural history and play an important role in preserving and conveying ancient Egyptian civilization. And Japan's Jiji news agency highlighted the Grand Egyptian Museum's full public opening, built with the Japanese support. And Jiji says the museum, developed in partnership with Japan, has opened fully to visitors, featuring a dedicated Tutankhamun presentation that brings thousands of objects together, including the iconic golden mask. A separate building showcases the restored royal boat recovered by the Japanese research team. The complex also houses a conservation and restoration center focused on advancing artifact care, alongside a conference hall and learning center that anchor long-term Japan-Egypt cultural cooperation. For further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by the UN Honored Historian, International Lecturer, Mr. Bassam El-Shamma. Welcome, sir, to Q News.
Good evening to you and to all our dear listeners.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sir, may I ask you, how does the Grand Egyptian Museum change the global story of Egyptology and moving research leadership back to Cairo in practical terms?
In practical terms, we achieved something very close to the degree of impossibility for more than 20 years. Yesterday, we Egyptians stood before our achievement to celebrate the culmination of a remarkable journey, a piece of art, an artifact collection in a building, a remarkable journey, a journey that exemplifies the power of determination, collaboration, and innovation, because when you're going to enter this building, you're going to see museology at its best. Museology is a new science of how to make a museum. It is not anymore the museum that a house that gathers monuments. It is something now more advanced than this, more active than this, more cultural than this. The success of this project surpassed expectations of the world, especially with all the obstacles that we went through since Mr. Farouk Hosni said his famous word to his friend in Europe, don't you know, we are going to build the greatest museum in the world. When he said that sentence, the challenge started. It touched lives. This is a museum that touches lives. I've been explaining this museum in my guided tours for foreigners and for different nationalities for the years 2024 and 2025.
Yes.
And the eyes of my people and my groups and the reflection is out of this world. And I've been doing this for the last 40 years. So if I compare my 38 years of explaining and lecturing and guiding, and then explaining how the people feel when they enter this building, the Grand Egyptian Museum. It rewrote chapters of history. It touched lives. It corrected mistaken theories and will leave a lasting impact on the world's community. And when we embarked on this endeavor, we were driven by a shared vision. We had friends like Japan and other countries who wanted to help and lend a hand. Thank you very much. A vision, still Egyptian, but also didn't mind at all having the help or even the ideas or the propositions from other nations that are in love with our Egyptian culture. A vision that was born out of a desire to make a difference, to push the boundaries of what is possible, to create something truly exceptional, and that's what we saw yesterday. And finally, we Egyptians, we are our...
Sir, let me move to my next question and ask you, what new discoveries or rereadings do you think of artifacts do you expect once the full collections are studied under one roof in Egypt, in the Grand Museum?
Yes, this is a building of pioneers. If you look at some of the artifacts inside, you will find, for example, the first attempt to carve a standing life-size statue in the world's history that goes back as almost 5,000 years for Pharaoh or king at that time. Now it's going to cancel the title Pharaoh. This museum is going to correct mistakes, and it's going to put the ancient Egyptian king, who is Djeser. This statue is in Hall 1 to those who are going to visit on the 4th of November when it reopens and ongoing. Check this statue, because you are going to be standing in front of the first attempt, unfinished, yet still the first attempt to make a life-size statue of a human, of a king, Djeser, Zoser, from Saqqara, from beside the Step Pyramid. We have a glass case there, one glass case. I'm not talking about thousands of pieces, which are all masterpieces. I'm going to tell you about one glass case, which has got monuments and antiquities, which goes as back as 700,000 years. This will cancel the big mistake which has been going on for years, that we said unjustly that the Egyptian civilization is only 7,000 years of history. 700,000 years, that's the statement from now on. We are 700,000 history culture. Also, we have, as was mentioned, the only suspended obelisk of Ramesses II in the world, an Egyptian idea, an Egyptian restoration, and an Egyptian hand that raised the obelisk in the air. Amazing.
Mr. Shama, we are running out of time, unfortunately, and this was Mr. Bassem Shama from Cairo, the UN Honored Historian, International Lecturer. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. And that brings us and our special coverage to a close. And from last night's spectacle to today's first wave of visitors, the Grand Egyptian Museum now moves from ceremony to delivery, galleries, access, and research in focus. We'll track the phased rollout, community impact, and the international collaboration in the days ahead. And for more stories and live updates, don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG. And from all of us here, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more news on Q News.